Greetings all, Dr. Raphael X here with another video with my friend Jeremy. So we're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of August. So please subscribe, consider subscribing, click on the notifications button, leave a comment, share this video, all that good stuff. So we're going to revisit a very important topic today, to kind of counteract the nihilism that is going on. And because we are creatures, emotional creatures, not postmodern nihilism, which is basically the belief in nothing, especially towards man. Man has lost, man's life has become meaningless. Postmodern nihilism has been an extreme response to the other extreme of modern rational anthropocentrism, where man has been exalted too highly. Postmodernism has totally debased man, we can say. So Benedict the 16th, the Pope before Francis, has really addressed these issues. Interestingly, he wrote a book. I don't know if he actually wrote the book as per se, or if it's a compilation of his works, but it's called A Christianity and the Crisis of Cultures. Another interesting book, which we'll be commenting on or alluding to, is God and Politics. I had it, but I couldn't find it. God and Politics by Sheed, F.J. Sheed, great author. It's like 50 pages. You can read it. This book also is like, yeah, it's like 70 pages, 100 pages, but really the really big print and huge margins. So we'll be talking about that, how the role of religion is necessary to fix that balance, the balance between an extreme modern anthropocentrism and the other extreme, the response to that, to a postmodern nihilism. So basically, what we're saying is that, again, religion regulates that. Religion provides us with basically two things: a belief in God and a belief in man. And these two things are absolutely essential for us um, to live accordingly, to live according to a sound life, we can say, a life that is fulfilling. Because you cannot have your life, our lives have to be based on objectivity. If they're not, they're going to be based on sentimentality, which has its ups and downs. Right? And we kind of see this manifested in the crazy love for animals that people have, and so especially in so-called first world countries, you see that people love animals more than people, at least in their manifestations. And why is that? Because, well, many times animals, cats and dogs, they seem like they appreciate people more. They're nicer, we can say. But when that happens, love loses its objectivity. Love loses its realistic basis, which religion has to provide for it. And then love falls into this pure kind of sentimentality, if you will. So today, religion needs to be applied to counter materialism, right? Which is essentially tied to communism. Communism is the root of all evils. Today, there's a talk of, and it comes from postmodernism, cultural communism. So what do we need to combat materialism? The belief in materialism, the belief in um, a transcendent reality. And here we could talk about how metaphysics and religion can be equated in this talk, because it's a philosophical talk. Metaphysics and religion can be identified here, as Aristotle actually talked about metaphysics being theology. There's a lot of truth to that. But we need this immutability, we need this stability, and this is only given in the immutable realm to provide a sense of purpose, a sense of dignity for man. But go ahead, Jeremy, if you want to provide some meat for what I've said, um, or if you want to kind of take it into a different path. Again, we're talking about not to offend vegetarians and vegans, but because of my allusion to meat, but go ahead, meat it up.
Put
Or
some vegan burger on your but yeah, no, it's an interesting topic. Let's think about how to kind of formulate it and narrow it down. We can start with perhaps kind of the question of what is real to to us. right? Normally and naturally, say always, but especially perhaps in the modern day. I think there's two things that may immediately come to mind in that connection, and those two things could be called ideological and volitional. We could say worldliness or materialism, whatever word we would prefer. We could start with the former, ideological or theoretical materialism. That could be described as the kind of either vague or more concrete sense, depending on how much we've studied the associated topics, that really reality is something associated with what is taught in the physics textbook or the physics YouTube videos or whatever the case might be, right? The age of the universe, the stars, the atoms, and so forth, right? On the very front lines of human understanding are the physicists, the astrophysicists, the astronomers, and such. Like, that is really reality, the little stuff that everything is made of. And then there's these kind of things on top of them, be it meaning, culture, relationships, whatever it might be. Right? So this is what we can call, again, theoretical materialism. It gives us an ideational framework, meaning concerned with ideas, such that it permits putting the issues that we may otherwise bring to the forefront of our attention, such as, again, purpose, uh, love, justice, morality, ethics, on the back burner. Because if really reality is along these lines, the stars, the supernova, the black hole, all these different terms that we hear, how real can we be? Right? The universe is very big. It doesn't care about us. We often hear, what's the gravitas of ethics or ethical living or anything like that. So that's one kind of defining characteristic, I think, of many areas of the modern world. Obviously, the world is a big place in the present day. There's also, say, tribes in the jungle that have not been contacted. They have a very different state of mind, surely, that we might not be able to sympathize with. There's all kinds of traditional cultures, but they're where, say, modern industrial society, kind of in its ideology, has spread to. I think that's a fair estimation of kind of the zeitgeist, the mentality of the present milieu. The second one we mentioned was volitional materialism or worldliness or whatnot. And that would be simply the fact that my immediate concerns have to do with my immediate concerns. For example, earning a livelihood, paying the bills, paying rent or paying off a mortgage, paying the cell phone bill, feeling good physically, um, pleasure, and so forth, whatever our vested interests are. That's kind of really real to me. It's interesting to speculate about the this and the that, but really, how much am I going to earn this year? Really? Will I be able to afford my lifestyle and all of that? So these two things combined can lead to an environment that is, to say the least, unconducive to, and in truth, may be very hostile to any possibilities of taking human life properly and seriously. Again, what's really real is a whole bunch of stuff, the stars and the this and the atoms and whatnot, and also my desires, right, to earn money, to have pleasure, and so forth. So this is my life. This is how I experience things in the moment. What is the desire that is kind of whose turn it is to dominate me? I'm looking forward to lunch. I'm looking forward to do this errand. I'm looking forward to this and that, right? And that's about it.
Yeah.
So you want to hop in?
No, no, go. I mean, unless you're finished.
I mean, we could add a couple more things, but so the idea would be that although it may seem to be real life, it may seem to be reality, and because we're used to it, it's just our lived experience. If we kind of pay attention to the best of what has been said as is conveyed in philosophy and literature and theology and so forth. That doesn't seem to be life at all. Life would seem to have much deeper, to say the least, aspects and possibilities and purposes and meanings, such as our concern with the individual in his or her relation to reality, that this lived experience, as it's called, does not so much as touch upon. So, if we consequently have a map that is not at all accurate concerning the environment that we're in, we're screwed as it concerns getting to the right destination. Right? If I'm in a no town or city, I don't know where to go, and I have a map for a totally different town or city, or that just shows me, a picture of the globe or whatever, or like one street. It's not going to help me. I need an accurate map. So if my mental map of reality is along the lines of what was mentioned, I eat, drink, and tomorrow we die, as has been said, then I'm certainly not going to hit upon any potentially more substantive issues and problems and situations of human life. Go ahead.
Right. No, and that's the problem of today because there's this reductionism which reduces everything to the transient. And this is actually the basis of the psychological problems, the cause of the psychological problems we're seeing today. Because if my life is very much based on what's changing on the transient, then I myself will not have any psychological stability, and then hence I will have psychological problems. So yeah, very much so. We need, I think I mentioned this before. Holiness is sanctity. I'm sorry, is sanity. Sanctity is sanity. So we need religion not only to be religious, obviously in its definition, but to be sane. We need that ultimate, immutable standard or realm, we can say, in order to live well, to function well. And this applies also to morality, because a religion and morality are essentially tied up, which we can address also. But I just want to allude people to, because what you said, because all our videos are kind of tied together, and there might be some repetition of things which is necessary to have in order to build up the topic. But I just allude people to um, I direct people to our video of what's real in reality, which we did some weeks ago. Check out that video because that also provides a basis for what we're talking about today. So, um, so we do experience what we immediately experience is change, of course, but there's a deeper sense that we want what doesn't change. And even we allude to things that don't change, like notions like in society, equality. But the problem is equality. Let's take equality, justice, and all this are very much related. But if equality, if nihilism is what prevails, if nihilism is what's true, then we're all equal to nothing, right? Because even communism insists in human equality, but everyone becomes equally poor. So it's okay, equal, but equal in what's the basis, or equal to what? And even if we're going back to the senses, what we perceive immediately that people are not equal. There is diversity in every single aspect, right? So where can we find this equality? If equality is a thing, right, which deep down we know is a thing that exists. We know it's something that it has to exist. We have to be equal in some aspect. But what is that aspect? And really, it's only religion that can provide um, this equality, and it's really in God, right? As it mentioned in the Declaration of Independence. So communism, materialism, which again they're interchangeable. Because they have rejected God, they have no basis for equality, and really there's no relationship between men. So in religion there's a true type of brotherhood that is based in God, as opposed to in communism, they call each other comrade. And communists call each other comrade, meaning brother, but that there is no brotherhood. It's purely a fiction. And what really dominates our self-interests, right? Is what the powerful are the ones who really are able to impose their viewpoint. So equality just becomes a total farce. So this is, I mean, we're showing We're really showing why religion is important through its effects, and this is an important argument because even the non-religious person or the person who diminishes the power of religion or thinks it's even something dangerous, which it can be, cannot deny though these principles that you need religion in society to thrive. You need religion in your individual life to for psychological stability. We need religion. We need this belief, and as you mentioned or alluded to rather, in this immutable realm, which is the metaphysical realm beyond physics, the etymology of metaphysics, beyond physics. Physics, what does physics study? Being as changing. So metaphysics is being as unchanging. And regardless what is deep down in the metaphysical realm, like how do we define that? What's the primary stuff of all things? We have to have belief at least that it exists, not what it is. We're not getting into that now. Maybe we will, what it is, but that it exists is vital. Is vital to believe in that. And it's the fundamental principle of unity with all men. So I want to chime in here.
Yeah, well said. Well, we could try to first of all bust apart the two forms of worldliness or materialism, whatever we would call them, because we kind of brought them up, but we didn't say why they're wrong. Right? We could say, well, of course, sure, but that's correct. That's right. So let's briefly touch upon that. So the question of what is reality? What is reality consistent of? Simple, excuse me, example. Let's say that, somebody writes you a thank you note. Say you pack your wife lunch and she says thank you. Right? So you take this note and you try to understand, what does this note mean? So you say, you know what? I think in order for me to understand this note, I need to look at it through a magnifying glass. And let's assume, obviously it could be very small, so you would have to do that to see it, but let's assume not. It's normally written, you can see it. Like, I want to understand what it is. So I look at it through a magnifying glass, I see it closer. Is that going to help me in itself to understand what the note is?
Yeah. No.
No. So I say, you know what? I need to look through a microscope. Now I see the pulp of the paper. Will that help me to understand what the note is? No, right?
No, unless you're analyzing it from a very much scientific aspect.
No, no, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. No,
Uh-huh.
no, thus far, right? So I look through an electron microscope. It still doesn't help me. I do a chemical test on it. It still doesn't help me. I measure each letter in the paper. I mathematicize the qualitative experiences here. And then I make deductions from them and I kind of analyze the math and so forth. Still doesn't help me. What is the only way to understand the note?
Well,
It's to,
Pythagoras would disagree, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah,
No,
well,
I agree with what you're saying essentially. But yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
you won't understand it, right? Like that. The only way to understand it is to read the note, right? It's these are noggin a little bit, use some capacities of critical thinking to learn the language. If it's in English, if it's in Spanish, whatever language it is, understand the note. That's the only way, right? And so we can apply that to something else, like a table. How do I understand what a table is? Same thing. Well, let me look at it closer. No, it's not going to help me. I have to think critically. Well, a table is something that some people use to eat dinner on, to eat other meals on. Some people use it to write on. That is what a table is. If I deny that that really exists, I'm denying something. And to deny something, I need to allude to that something, which then means that it exists for what it's worth, according to the criteria relevant to it, right? So the notion of thank you exists, the notion of table exists, but I can never get to these meanings by any kind of naive empirical investigation. I need to again consider things critically. I'm a detective. I want to solve a case. So I think about it just the way that we would think about it, right? Who did it? Why did they do it? What's their motive? Well, same thing, but let me check the CCTV footage. Let me do fingerprints. I'm analyzing the situation and I'm trying to come to an answer. I'm not simply assuming that the meaning lies in some kind of naive way in the stuff that I see in sight content, in touch content, in smell, in taste, and so forth. It's another argument would be that is the only way to understand reality, period.
Mhm.
Right? Because as you mentioned before, but you can also understand it, quote unquote, scientifically, which would be concerned with the stuff itself. But we see that's also not entirely on point. Let's say that, I'm a big physicist, Einstein, Planck, or whoever it might be, and I fall asleep, I have a dream. And I dream whatever it is that I dream of. I'm walking, I'm talking, and so forth. And I think in the dream, being a physicist, it's my job. I'm like, well, let me figure out what's the nature of this reality. So I kind of do the same thing as was mentioned. I make some mathematical measurements. Right? I subtract the secondary qualities, meaning color, taste, stuff like that. I assume that's mental, but what's really physically out there is length and number and maybe tangible and penetrability. So I take those primary qualities, I mathematicize them, I build a mathematical world image using those numbers, right? And then I make deductions from them. And ultimately, I come to the conception that, wow, it must be that really the nature of this stuff is a bunch of atoms and a bunch of Higgs boson particles, and let me collide them and this and that. And then it must be that there's photons and they bounce off of these atoms and they go into the optical nerve and they form in the brain, and that goes into all this kind of stuff. Is that a possible step, logically speaking? Is that at all viable? You get what I'm saying?
For what? For to know the
For
thing.
the physicist to do that, would he actually gain
Oh,
insight about reality
right,
by
right,
doing
right. No. Yeah.
He wouldn't, right? And it's not a question of time, if the dream is a little bit longer, if he does a little bit something else, it's on principle impossible. There is no way to get around experience by anything that we do to experience. No amount of measurements, no amount of tunnels underneath Europe with the atoms colliding, none of that. It will never get us around experience, right? So here, then somebody could posit like a Kant, for example, there's things in themselves that are not part of experience, but they cause experience via unknown and unknowable means. We don't want to open that can of worms, but that's unfeasible. It has been certainly very persuasively argued that there's things in themselves, the thing in itself, excuse me, table, the thing in itself, thank you note, then it somehow turns into experience. We get into so many contradictions, so many issues. So basically, and that's not to say, obviously, that life is a dream. A dream is something that happens within life. That would just be misusing the word dream. Life is life. A dream is a dream. It's just to highlight the foundation of knowledge here, the epistemology here. Right? So we see there's absolutely no way to gain any insight on experience by any of these methods. It's not that interpreting a thank you note in the normal way is, oh, this means thank you, or interpreting a table in the normal way, oh, this is something that we eat on. It's not that that's one way. Oh, that's just kind of the cultural way, our way, but really the reality is the atoms and the space and the no, it's the only way. And all of these things that we hear about, these words and these equations, it would be, again, it would have the same epistemic worth as the same efforts would have in the dream that the physicist is having. With that said, insofar as, for example, aspects of these conceptual mathematical systems are tied in with experience via, for example, correspondence statements. This concept in physics means this practically. Obviously, that can be used to order and predict experience very conveniently, and we can use that to get things done, but it gives us no philosophical insight as to the nature of reality whatsoever. And it can never do that. Even if we do it for 10,000 years, try to come up with a mathematical theory that accommodates all the known kind of elements of the present kind of physical picture, electromagnetism, this and that, it'll never happen on principle, as we can see. So that's as to that first part of the theoretical materialism. And the second part, I've been talking for a while, so you can hop in, or I can go to the second part. What do you feel like?
No, let me just comment on,
Yeah.
well, experience and experiment, doing experiments on things and immediate experience of things, they themselves realize their limitations. So I think they're necessary processes for help us to gain philosophical knowledge. Now, there could be if someone's very deep, a tremendous mind, there could be a philosophical intuition there. Obviously, to know the nature of a thing um, is immediate, but to know something deeply, let's say like in phenomenology, where you have a phenomenology of the soul, like Edelstein wrote, you would have to base it like the more you know something based on experience and experiment, the more you can have an elaborate philosophy of that thing, at least according to phenomenon. That's how the phenomenologists built up. So, but you're right in the sense that really experience and experimentation do not give me that profound that knowledge of really what the thing is. And that's why I think Aristotle was criticizing the first philosophers who saw the primary stuff in merely the material cause, which we have addressed this topic before. And Aristotle added a formal cause. So you can see a thing by its different causes. The intrinsic cause is a material cause. What makes up the thing? I'm sorry, what is the thing made out of? Then there's the formal cause, like what is it? So it has a substantial form, and this is the more of the substantial form is the what of the thing, which is ultimately immaterial taking of itself. Now, there's also, and this is where we get into religion, the extrinsic cause, which is the efficient cause, which is what made the thing, right? So it's important also when we analyze things, and we see this in the artificial realm, that we at least have in mind, especially if the thing is complex, who made it or what made it? Where does it come from? That will give us a lot of insight into what the thing is, right? And this efficient cost. So there's a lot of factors here. So you're definitely right that just basing yourself on mathematics, this is just the accidents of the thing. This is actually the accident of quantity, according to scholastic philosophy. These are the quantities of the thing. If you want to focus on color, these are the qualities or degrees, qualities of the thing. If you want to focus on location, this is the locus of the thing, right? So there's different accidents that do not get to the substance of the thing. Like, what is it? And this is where Aristotle goes into different causes. But these accidents, because in a way, we know the substance through the accidents. So, but we know that the accidents are accidental. We know this is not really the thing itself, but it's still important to do to kind of transcend, if that makes sense. But what I do like is that sometimes when we're very complicated and we miss the simple, which I got from your note example. And that's why religious people tend to be simple people, not simple as a pejorative in the pejorative sense. But these so-called intellectuals, the communists were the so-called intellectuals, and so-called intellectuals tend to be atheists because religion is not on their level. Religion is for the simple. But at the same time, the simple have the ability to penetrate things and almost go beyond that, which is accidental to the thing itself, and say, "Oh, this is made by God." They go to the efficient cause of the thing, right? So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that. But go ahead. You wanted to mention another point.
Yeah, yeah. Good points. Yeah, I think it's just there's kind of so many aspects here that could be
Oh
touched
yeah,
upon
there are.
for sure. But I think just the simplest thing, the simple example, again, by no means are we conflating life and a dream. It's just to highlight the principles at play here concerning knowledge. If I have a dream, anything that can be experienced in real life can be dreamt. I have a dream. We understand once we wake up, all of that was an aspect, all of the things that I dreamt of were experiences, period. Everything that I smelled, touched, tasted, saw, heard, we got all the five senses, right? All of that was experience.
Mhm.
I cannot posit then, it's clear, right? Concerning a dream, I can't say what caused the experience of me walking in the woods were in themselves trees made out of Higgs boson particles or atoms, off of which photons bounced off of and formed an image in my brain or whatnot. We see that's nonsense. We cannot say that on principle. You get the point? You get what I'm saying? We can never say that. It's very simple. It's experience. We can't get around that experience by any means whatsoever.
You're
What
saying the experience is ultimately immaterial. Is that what you're saying?
I think ultimately we can't, there's nothing outside of the given that we could reach for to define it in terms exterior to it. It is what it is. Red is what it is.
It's
We
like
can find
ineffable. It's an ineffable reality that we
it.
can't
Well,
really
it's simple. It's a
describe.
given. It's a smell is a given. A taste is a given. A color is a given. I can read everything in the world about a color, but I can never experience the color except by experiencing it. I can study its concomitants that are associated with it according to various uh, scientific paradigms, right? The wavelengths and the optical nerve and this and that, but that's not the color itself. Color is what it is. Reality is given to us. We can't ultimately define it in any other terms, but by pointing, it does seem, right? It's like what is
That's
green?
the
Well, that's
basics. Yeah.
green, and that's what it is.
Our passivity to things like to receive these external stimuli is definitely just a given. We're just we're passive to reality. And that's why the idealists and they fundamentally don't make sense because of the reality. I'm not thinking of any reality before I perceive this reality that's automatically imposed on me. So for sure, there's a mystery there, which I think you're coming at, is a mystery in a sense that we cannot know um, what really happens in that. So yeah, it's just it's the reality that pre-exists us. So it's the conformity that we have to have, and that's the intellectual humility that we have to have. I see idealism very much rooted in pride. But the intellectual sincerity based on humility is that, wait a minute, reality is imposing itself on me, right? Now, you
It,
can obviously mentally analyze, but that's subsequent to this fundamental experience, which I think you're mentioning, which is a mystery in itself, and it just kind of happens. And it's really and it's individualized too. I think we mentioned this example before that someone's saying if you're seeing a dog and the dog is not there, there's a discrepancy there. And I can tell you there's no dog, but I can't tell you you're not seeing a dog. So that becomes very much individualized. That true, that sensing, even though it can be wrong, not conform to reality, and it's something very much you, part of you, right, associated with you, that can be right or wrong according to if it's true in reality. But yeah, it's just it is. There's definitely a mystery there. I mean, when we talk about things or define things, we can only go to a level to a foundational level. You can't go beyond that. Like you can't because you use words to define other words, and then those words to define other words, those words to define other words. But then you get to that point where you can't like being um is really impossible to define because you get to the point where you intuit what it is. I remember metaphysics being was that which is outside nothingness, which is that's a crazy definition, but being is what is. What does it mean? What is? So you can't just infinitely define things. So yeah, experience would be so fundamental that I would agree with you that it would be something that's just a given. If that makes
yeah,
sense, what I'm saying, if we're on the same page. So yeah, you can't have this scientific explanation to kind of reduce experience to because then you fall into scientism. Then you fall into rationalism, saying, "Oh, I can rationally understand everything I do." No, you leave the realm of mystery, and this is going to religion too. Because if we have mystery in the natural realm, because this is not religion yet, we're not. I mean, this is just the natural realm. If there's mysteries in the natural realm, how many? If there has to be how many? Of course, there'll be mysteries in a supernatural realm, right? A realm that surpasses the natural. Like just to deny the supernatural is absurd. When we see these mysteries every day, just think of another being coming from another one, like a being being born from another one. Like Saint Augustine said, just think about all the beings that are just beginning to exist at conception. That's a tremendous mystery. Life, existence. When do things start to exist? What does it mean to exist? So fundamental. And as you're alluding to, in the philosophy of knowledge, experience, right? What is that? Yeah. Ultimately, we have to take it as a given.
yeah. Well said, right? There are certain things that are given to us. We cannot define them in terms exterior, meaning out external to them. For example, that 1 + 1 is 2. Tautology, we say we can't cognize that or understand it through other terms. Well, let me use some other terms. Maybe it's because the atoms, that's why 1 + 1 is 2. No, it's given. Right? The color green, the color red, all these
Yeah.
things are given to us. So that's my point, right? I think it's kind of a simple point, but it might be a little bit tricky to grasp, right? We take the primary, again, qualities, number, the fact that something can't be passed through, and we assume those things are external to a mind which is internal, and are then copied into that mind. that has been criticized so extensively. It's almost kind of no point of doing it again, but it can be, right? Imagine if we took smell or taste and assumed that is the fundamental reality, or what those sensations are the absolute reality. And we build a world image off of that, right? And then we say that really causes consciousness and mind. It's obviously so silly, but that's what we do with sight and touch, right? In order to make measurements and to form that mathematical kind of skeleton, in some ways descriptive of our experiences, we have to take things that we see, we have to take things that we touch, we have to make measurements, and we choose the conventions with which to measure things. You get what I'm saying? So we build up
Yeah.
that world image. From that world image is where all these terms and all these concepts come from. The atoms, the Brownian motion, the interpreted in a certain way, the cosmos, the universe, all of those things are constructs, are conceptual mathematical constructs. That's not to say that's not in support of subjective idealism, quote unquote, right? Or that there's no reality. That's a different point. But it does hold that those are merely conceptions that we come up with. You get what I'm saying, or
Yeah,
not
but
really?
I mean that's really okay. That's not that's very modern philosophy. That's not a classical scholastic philosophy. But okay, we'll take it like that because uh, Aristotle will say substance is what the world is made up of substances, and the substances have a they're made up of material matter, but then th're made up of forms, like the substantial forms, which are the universals. So the universals do have some type of existence. So if I say a book, it's not merely that's pure nominalism. What you're saying is nominalism, where everything a name is just universals are just names. They don't mean anything. That's basically what you're saying. Universals are constructs. But no, the scholastic, and this is actually important in a way, the universals, they have to have some basis in reality. That
Yeah,
um, there has to be some basis in reality for dog, right? It's not just a mere construct of what I name this compilation of atoms, right? It's just oh, I just we just gave it this. Now the name, the sound of it, yeah, it's just totally arbitrary. But the fact is, since the name symbolizes the reality, there's in that reality, there's a form there that makes it what it is, the whatness of the thing. So it is really Aristotelian, or you could be Platonic and give more reality to the forms and say the forms dog actually exists. The universals exist outside of my mind in another realm in the world of the forms. But so you're defending a nominalism, which is
well,
we can use that. I mean, if that's the philosophy you want to use, it's okay.
no, I wouldn't say that it's the same thing as nominalism. I'm saying that, meaning that there's no such thing as universals. I'm saying the concepts and the constructs that we associate with reality. Again, these terms that most people are aware of, the black hole, the atoms, the this and the that, right? You ask a person on any street in the world, right? Again, aside from particular situations, the uncontacted tribe in the Amazon, this or that, what is reality? What are things made of? Atoms. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. That is purely fictional. That is imaginative. We can never find that out by anything that we do to experience. I'm not saying that there's no such thing as universal. That's a different question. I would say.
So you're
You get
saying
what
the
I'm saying?
fact that it's a black hole, the fact that we call it a black hole is fictional? Well, I'm missing what's the fictional part.
Yeah. So again, let's say right now I go for a nap and I fall asleep and I experience what in my dream is waking life, right? I experience waking life. I'm in my dream. I'm eating, I'm drinking, and so forth. Is there anything that I could do within the dream in order to reach the reality or the literalness of the constructs of contemporary physics? Black hole, universe, atom, and so forth.
If there's anything in the dream,
Is there anything that possibly that I could do within the confines of my dream experience to reach those constructs?
I don't even know how to answer that. I guess no, I don't know.
No,
I'm not
right.
understanding the question.
I'm taking a nap. I'm dreaming of. eating lunch.
Hmm.
I can dream of any kind of scientific equipment, anything at all.
Hmm.
Will any of that ever make the proposition that really reality, as I'm dreaming of it, is consistent of little dots called atoms, and really the reality is the universe and so forth?
No, no, I guess not.
Right.
No.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So in our waking experience, which is not, again, just to emphasize, we're not saying life's a dream. Life is life. It's the
Okay.
same idea in that anything and everything that we can ever interface with is an aspect of our experience. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So in just as in the dream, there is nothing that we can do to that experience, whether we measure it, whether we look at it closer, that will ever give us what we can call ontological or actual philosophical insight concerning the nature of reality. We never have grounds for that. You get what I'm
Okay. I
saying?
don't, yeah, yeah. I'm not sure why you keep alluding to dream.
Well, because it highlights the epistemology here in question. It's very clear in the dream that everything is an aspect of experience. Right? We analyze the dream based on meanings and purposes and so forth, but we don't say that really my lunch in the dream is made up out of a bunch of little things, right? A bunch of
Hmm.
atoms, and the
Hmm.
photons bounce off of the atoms, go into my eye, and form the image in my head. We will never say that, right? It's just
Okay.
experience.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. We don't have any other grounds. We have nothing in waking life that we could use to say that our epistemology ought to be different in waking life.
So you're making an analogy between our experience in dreams and our experience in real life. And you're saying
Yeah.
because we experience this in dreams, this is the way we experience it in
The
real life.
nature of experience is the same, as far as we have grounds to say, right? Always. Whether we're dreaming, we're hallucinating, we're in waking life. That's why the only way, what I was arguing, the only way to understand experience is to critically analyze it, is to live life and to think and to feel and to reason, right? And consequently to gain insight on the nature of reality. It is not by the way of physics or astrophysics or anything like that. When we make that assumption, we assume again on the very front lines of human understanding are physicists or astrophysicists, whoever it might be, Stephen Hawking was, whatever the case is. If we take the other interpretation on the front lines of human understanding is, for example, a Plato, not a Planck, is, for example, who else to make the letters match? A Platonist, right? Somebody like that, not Einstein. You get what I'm saying? It's people that think philosophically and critically. They have genuine insight as to the nature of reality, not those of us that are functioning with this kind of a mathematical conceptual skeleton of the world.
Yeah,
You
okay.
get
Yeah, yeah, I think it's clear. Yeah, but basically philosophy, um so you said the experience is not definable. Is that right?
we can't. It doesn't seem that we can draw upon any exterior terms from experience to describe it, right? It's like, again, how can I convey red aside from simply seeing red? Anything I can kind of exhaust all the resources in the world, I'm still never going to give red to somebody that is, say, colorblind, that can't see red unless I fix their
Right,
colorblind.
right. Yeah, you can't define red without
Can't
actually
define it,
seeing it.
right?
Yeah, well, you can say it's a sense perception of things.
I can say it. I can describe it any which way, but it's not going to give it to me. Just like the feeling of hunger, the feeling of satiety, whatever it is, meaning when the stomach is full, thirst, hydration, all these things are experiences.
Hmm.
If I've
Right.
never felt love, there's no way I can read all the books in the world about it, all the love poems and whatever. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
from that experience love. I have to experience the given, right? And it is what it is. And this idea that really reality is not what is given, it is really these noumenon, meaning the things in themselves that are reproduced mentally. This is a new idea, relatively speaking, say in the past few centuries, and it's bogus as far as it seems. It's completely untenable. It's ridiculous. It's once we really begin to think about it, that there's a noumenon, again, a thing in itself for every single thing that we experience that it exists to itself and for itself. and is somehow copied into the mind. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get you. The problem is though, is if we're going to hyper focus on really because experience is subjective, right? And you're saying you're not defending subjectivism, but you cannot escape subjectivism because if we're going to downplay the empirical sciences, which give us objectivity, so mathematics gives us objectivity, which is universally accessible to us. Your experience is not accessible to me. And this is where Descartes went down that he focused first on his experience, I think, right? This is the problem. I don't have access to your thoughts or Descartes' thoughts. So that principle cannot apply to me. I think you can't start from that. You have to start from a universally accessible principle that we all have, and I know that you have. You know what I'm saying? Like, of course, I know your experiences are yours, my experiences are mine. But we're not getting, not even philosophy has to go into the objective realm. If you start from that subjective principle, there's no way you're going to justify objectivity. Is that this,
Yeah, yeah,
what I'm
no,
saying?
that's a very good point. Yeah. So I would say again, depends what we mean by the term subjective and objective. We again are so stuck in the kind of contemporary
No, I'm
paradigm.
just saying start from the extra mental. So if we're saying that the predominant reality is the intramental, you would fall into idealism because you can't justify extra mental reality by starting first with intramental experience. You have to first start with extra mental reality, the noumena. But how do you justify that the noumena even exists if you just focus so much on experience, different aspects of experience? I don't have access to your experience. This is just, we have to focus the empirical sciences, and that's why, in a sense, they're greater than experience. They're greater in the sense that they're accessible. So I can read like a physics problem. Maybe I might need some formation to understand it. But then two people can understand a physics problem. I cannot have your experience of red. I don't know what your experience of red is, but and philosophy cannot be very much based on that. It has to be based on the scientific framework of sense experience, something that's more objective. But go ahead. I don't know if, but
Yeah.
this is
No, I
this is
get
an interesting deviation.
it's a good point. I get what you're saying. So again, by experience, we don't mean mental as in the sense of whim or what I feel like or anything like that. By experience, we're just picking a term to unify the extent, meaning what exists. We can call it reality. We can say that reality is objective. It is what it is. But insofar as it is a kind of reproduced or emerges in individual minds, it's subjective and it has to do with individual cogitation. So, for example, that 1 + 1 is 2, considered on its own, is objective. It's reality, right? Because one would refer to one, say, distinct a
Right.
distinction, and the other one would refer to another distinction. The plus sign would imply a combination in attention, whatever, or literally, or excuse me, tangibly or in attention. And the equals would ask what is the result, and that would be 1 and 1. In other words, two. So considered from its own kind of point of view on its own, we just say it's objective reality. However, that has to be reproduced in individual minds that are affected by anything from sleep to the flu to coffee
Hmm.
to all kinds of things, right? 1 + 1, hopefully, most people can almost always solve, but even then, if somebody's in a coma, they can't presumably cognize that. But complicated math, I may have to get my 8 hours of sleep if I'm a professional mathematician. I may have to have my coffee, my whatever else I use to stay sharp in order to cogitate these complicated mathematical complexes or
Hmm.
equations. All right. So from that point of view, it's subjective, meaning it's predicated on my individual kind of a function, right? Physiological function. But from the point of view of itself, so to say, it's objective. So I'd say it's the same thing with the rest of reality. What is, for example, justice is not um, resultant of random words that I say. I think it's just for me to go to the front of the line all the time just because I feel like it, because I'm me and these other bums are not me. I just said a bunch of words. I'm just doing what I feel like. That does not mean I can invent the concept of justice. Justice is something, right? It's objective. But for me to possess the idea in my mind, for me to realize it, for me to be a just person, I have to think it through. I have to follow reality where it leads me, right? And come to a clear conception of justice. It doesn't make it subjective. And again, in this sense of whatever, I'll say whatever, right? Real thought. And we don't really think, right? We associate. For example, I was in this country and I got a stomach ache. Bad country, bad place. That's called association, right? There's also collocation, what comes together. It, you know, um, Excuse me. Every time it's rainy out, I get a headache. Right? So I've combined two things here. Also, not really clear, not really thinking. Excuse me. Real thought seems to be following out necessity. What is really the case? I'm a detective in a kind of figuring out a case. Okay, so I see that there was only one person working at the factory at this time, and then the screwdriver went missing. It follows that insofar as there was no other person there, that's the person that took the screwdriver. This is reality. It's logic. It's not arbitrary in some way. I'm not just yapping, right? But I have to figure it out as the detective. You get what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
that is predicated on my personal uh, cogitations, meaning cognitive powers. Again, I'm the detective and I'm super sleepy. I can't think right now. I may not crack the case. I've got in my sleep. I'm feeling good and I'm thinking, I'm following out necessity. Okay, who was here at what time? What went missing? When did it go missing? Yada, yada. I'm following out necessity, right, in order to reproduce it in my own mind. So we're not saying subjective, again, in the sense of whim and fantasy and association and so forth. You get what
Right,
I'm
but
trying to say?
even as the detective is a type of science being a detective. It's a type of science that you have to know. I mean, you have to be formed to be a detective and follow the rules of, I
Sure,
mean, obviously in art, it's an art too.
for sure.
But there's definitely some principles in science that you have to follow, which provide you that framework to be a good detective, which you're able to analyze it, of course, subjectively, and things like that. But yeah, basically, um, just science cannot be diminished or it cannot be equated with the purely subjective.
For
And
sure, for
correct me
sure.
if I'm wrong if that's not what you're saying, but I don't think that's what you're saying. But science is more important than the mere subjective experience of things because science, again, is what I can communicate that. Actually, you can't teach unless you know a science, which means like a universal objective knowledge. But if I just have experience, if I have a lot of experiences, you can't really teach that
It- it-
because that's so much part of you. That's you. You can't teach an experience. I mean, you can mention it, but no, you can't give that. But you can give objective, universal, scientific knowledge to others, and that's what teaching does in general. So in a sense, that would be a higher plane of knowledge than the mere even though subjective can be very, I mean, it's very profound. You intuit, you analyze, but again, that very communication, what allows communication, is the purely objective. I would say would be the basis of it. But go ahead. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I think we're again just briefly, and then we probably should move on to the bigger topics here.
Yeah.
Uh, Again, we're I think we're attributing different meanings to the words objective, subjective, experience. Commonly, experience is associated just the way it's used colloquially. Means I had an experience. I went to the amusement park. Right. I had the experience of eating ice cream. How am I going to communicate that? We don't mean right now. I don't mean experience in that strictly in that sense. Those are experiences. We mean by the term experience to unify all possible content. So, concerning, for example, that distinction between primary and secondary qualities, it is easier to agree that one cannot pass through a wall, right? Than it is and to communicate that, than to precisely communicate a smell or a taste, right? And we can kind of or number, for example. It's easier to say, okay, this is two, and you see it, I see it. We can touch it. It's two. Than to communicate exactly how cinnamon crunch toast tastes. But that is not to say that there is a qualitative absolute difference between my ability to see or touch two or my ability to see or touch the fact that I can't pass through a wall, and my ability to taste the cinnamon crunch or to hear the music or to see the color. You get what I'm saying? We
Hmm.
don't like the word experience, no problem. Let's take the word reality. Those are all realities. Right? You cannot communicate any realities or any experiences to somebody, say, in a coma, in a comatose state where they're not thinking. You can't say, okay, well, because physics is objective, I can convey it to an insentient person, right? Let me learn physics while I'm asleep, in deep sleep. Let me just play the tapes. I'm going to wake up. Right? No, right? It's all part of experience or reality, both tangible experiences, visual experiences, auditory experiences, um, smell and taste experiences. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or realities,
Hmm.
right? Um, but anyhow, yeah, we could quickly or try to tackle that other point. So
Yeah.
that's
Go ahead.
as it concerns that theoretical materialism, which would again, the problem is not with science properly construed, which is one of the most kind of magnificent movements of human thought that has permitted what we have today, such as this video chat, such as sending people into space and every kind of miraculous, unbelievable thing. That's say it's not a pride phenomenal. I mean, obviously there's issues, the controlling the nukes and controlling the this and the that, but that's separate. It's incredible the scientific method of how to think, right? How to spot personal biases, how to communicate our information, how to build generate a knowledge base from generation to generation. All of that is priceless, probably quite literally, right? It's phenomenal. It's not the issue at all. The issue would be, again, to attribute, say, for example, primacy of existence and importance to some of the terms and some of the theories that we hear. Again, this general kind of sense or mentality that really reality is the universe and the atoms and the this and that, even within, again, the circumscribed sphere of physics, that notion that the world consists out of little dots early in the 20th century was debunked. That's more going back maybe to when it was Laplace around the 1700s, 1800s. So that view that most people now have, that's going back like 200 years. So even within, again, the givens of physics, even taking that as it is in the early 20th century, that's debunked. Right? And that's, again, assuming some of the axioms of physics, never mind taking a critically philosophical or philosophically critical view of things. So that's what I'm saying. It's not at all a knock on the scientific method in the
Yeah.
least, on the bones of science. It's a particular kind of thoughtless, naive realism or interpretation of things that we're attacking a little bit
Yeah.
nicely. Oh, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, basically, I mean, I would disagree that material does give you aspect of reality study, and there are atoms actually in its principles not wrong. I mean, atoms just means there has to be indivisible parts of matter, but at the same time, matter is essentially divisible. So maybe it's not sound because you can always keep dividing it. But at least in principle, it does make sense, even though based on experiment, you can't get into primary stuff. And the first philosophers realized that, but they did talk about primary stuff, and that's the very birth of philosophy, that there's a material cause that underlies like what makes matter matter. There has to be an answer to that question, or else we don't even understand what we mean by matter if there's no primary stuff to it. So in principle, it makes sense, but the problem with materialism, the isms, is that only matter exists. Even matter itself points to something else, right? That it points to something that transcends it. So when we get into the realm of value, theology, when you get into the ethics of value, the philosophy of value, now we're getting into the religious realm. Can we talk about value apart from a religious truth, apart from God, apart from revelation, apart from knowing what man is? Can we know man based on a purely materialistic aspect? We can, but uh not fully. So we don't have that integral knowledge of man. Man, in our other videos, we had how man is also he's essentially a soul. How man's dignity is rooted in that soul, that immutable aspect, that spiritual aspect. So really going there. this is the antidote for society. Like this is how we get meaning back into society. And so when you see, for example, phenomena like ISIS, when ISIS came up and they're actually starting to kind of, there's a resurgence of ISIS again. A lot of people, even from Europe, were non-Muslims were flocking to ISIS because they saw an ideal there. There's this religious ideal that transcends the merely materialistic ideals, which actually is an oxymoron. There's no such thing as a materialistic ideal unless you're scientism. I mean, it becomes a religion, but it doesn't, science can never give value, right? It's separated from value. So we need a religion to instill deal ideals, to instill an ultimate purpose in man, and if not, man will find it elsewhere. We're living in a post-Christian society. It's not like in the barbarian times where it was kind of we just evangelize, and back then you just evangelize the leader, everyone kind of followed the leader. But now that we're in post-Christian society, we need to re-Christianize society because more specifically, of all the religions, of course, is in Christianity, where man receives his ultimate dignity, being created and redeemed by God, which is tremendous, and that seems to be the solution. But how to do it is the question now. Now, obviously, we're trying to do it in an intellectual way, but to animate the practical way of doing it, right? There has to be a praxis involved, but that's underlined by a sound philosophy. But we have to show, though, that religion is necessary, and I think that's why to go. I think it's good to go to the metaphysical realm, and then from there build on. But the arguments I think are most useful is to show the effects, the consequences, or the reductio ad absurdum argument, which is okay, let's take your position, no religion, nihilism. Let's take that position. What are the consequences of that? And because those consequences are so dire, they're so horrible, they cannot possibly be true. Nihilism cannot possibly be true. Communism cannot be possibly be can't possibly be true because of the tremendous consequences, anthropological consequences it has on man. So I'm going from the kind of a more inductive, you're going more deductive, which is fine. But I think the inductive is more efficient, going from the effects to the causes and saying, listen, look at these effects. Look what nihilism has proposed. Where else can we go? We have to do, obviously, we're not going to anthropocentrism because that doesn't even make any sense, really, especially from nihilism to the other extreme. But this kind of this worldview, if you will, this transcendent view, this eschatology that gives man meaning as pure reference to supernatural, eternal, immutable.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff. So I would say one thing to say is that just because the consequences of a given view we don't find kind of to our liking, it doesn't necessarily mean that the view is false,
Well,
right?
it's more than to our liking. Like they're objectively horrible. Like they're bad. I mean, you have suicide rates are up.
Well,
You have societal decline. You have demographic death. You have tremendous abuses of human rights. And these are underlying by pretty much. I mean, the atrocities of communism are not just. I don't like them. The atrocities of communism are pretty. They're pretty. Based historically based, and even outside religion, the same atheists will realize, man, what Mao Zedong did, what Stalin did, the ends justify the means, which is a principle of communism. That has been ferocious for humanity in the 20th century. So it's really, and that's why nihilism has came up because we're like, man, look what rationalism has produced with communism, Nazism, and the two world wars, and now you're just having a kind of despair towards man, that man really is just capable of evil. And that's what Benedict XVI wanted to do. He wanted to kind of, and Vatican II, they kind of wanted to boost the morale of man and say, no, we're good, we're capable of good, we're capable of God ultimately. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, yeah, real quick, is it possible to put on pause so I can
Yeah,
put
and
on
I can
pause real
edit
quick?
this
We
too.
can
I
resume.
will, probably, will, probably, will probably will probably will edit. Let me see real quick. Yeah,
Yeah, so I would say that you're saying that the consequences of, say, what's been called nihilism, materialism, and such are horrid, but within a particular paradigm, particular conception of the world, it doesn't matter, right? And indeed, we can easily take such a perspective. For example, every time that we wash our hands, we commit a mass genocide of germs, right? As far as scholars tell us, we commit mass genocides concerning cows and hands and things like that. Now, I'm certainly not going the route of saying that's bad. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying here ultimately we have to consider what is true, what is reality. For example, if it is really concretely, truly, practically in every way, so that I, whoever I am as an individual, am nothing more than a compilation of stuff that I'm in fact an organ or an epiphenomenon of an organ, such as my brain, right? Something like this, then I cannot, on principle, have any other worth than can any other object or than can a cow at most, right? I can have some desires. Yeah, I want to, eat and drink and then,
I don't know. Go ahead. Yeah.
yeah. So picking up, right? So the question is, what is really reality? What is really truth concerning persons, concerning reality? If I'm just a body, I'm just a bunch of stuff, then I am just a bunch of stuff. I can have no worth. I can have no value. I do want certain things and I don't want other things, and that's about it. And it really doesn't matter what happens to me. Again, whoever it is that I am. However, with a critical analysis and interpretation of experience, we don't like that word, of reality, we can come to different conclusions. We can see, for example, simply kind of by studying, history and biographies, that many human personalities have reached peaks such as are inconceivable for um, animals, never mind for things, if we're going to be strictly materialistic, right, and say that we're a bunch of stuff. That's just a fact, right? And the fact is that if I do remain as I am at present, materialistic in the theoretical sense, but more importantly, in the practical sense, that the uppermost ceiling of my concerns is concerned with my appetites, my impulses, my self-centeredness, I will not attain to the good and the happiness that life has been for no few amount of persons. Right? I have to take myself seriously enough to work with myself. If I write myself off and say that it's a big universe and I'm just a little dot and it doesn't matter, and now leave me alone so I can go do whatever the heck I please and what brings me pleasure in the moment, I will, excuse me, remain a petty, pathetic little thing, a little dot of self-centeredness and narcissism and nothingness. And that's no fun. It's a living death, right? Whatever
Right.
the facts might be, ontologically speaking, right? That's an immediate fact of experience. I have to take myself seriously. I have to take my sentience and self-consciousness or possibility thereof seriously. I have to strive to live a life of devotion and sacrifice and self overcoming, right? And going out of myself in service to ideals and ideas that I suppose to be true and that I suppose to be everlasting. When a person finds his or her center above his or her own individual idiosyncratic animality, this critter that likes this snack and doesn't like that, and you don't talk to me like that, and where's my money? And when I find my center above that, then I can have true, as was mentioned perhaps at the beginning, true unity, true brotherhood, true sisterhood with others who also have found their center in something higher than themselves. If my center remains in me, then I can never really relate to anybody. It's all utilitarian in any and all circumstances. I can have animal affections for others. I know I'm used to my barista. He or she gives me coffee every morning. Oh, where are you? Oh, you had a sick day. I'm used to them, right? Anybody that we're around, we get used to. We have affection for them. We have affection for the mailman or mailwoman, right? That's it is what it is. But to have real love, to have a real will for the wheel, meaning the goodness of another, demands self-sacrifice, right? I cannot cling to myself. I cannot cling to my self-centeredness. I have to overcome myself. I have to truly mature, be a human being, not be an animal. And again, that is simply descriptive of experience as it is. It's like we don't know the ultimate reality concerning the physical world, but we still can figure out what it takes to be in shape. We can still figure out what it takes to have athletic performance. There's a certain cap, right? If you say, why do the muscles work? Well, the ATP or the energy production and but at a certain point, it's like, I don't know. Nobody knows, right? Because then we would have to know all the stuff that we were discussing. What is the nature of things and matter and so forth? Well, we know enough to get good results if we try. So just so we don't have to have the whole picture of reality to get good results and be happy and be wholesome and be the kind of people we want to be. We can start with where we're at, face ourselves, face our insufficiencies and inadequacies, face our self-centeredness, most importantly, or evil will, meaning me and mine and I, and let me get mine and all of that, and acknowledge it, right? And try to humble ourselves and try to move ahead in our development and not be little children, but past, unless we are supposed to be little children, we're 5 or 10 or whatever, 15, right? But be attained to a stature commensurate to our age, commensurate to our species, human beings, not, pigs and cows and all that. And that's probably the way to our true good or something along those lines. And whatever kind of theoretical conception supports that, it's interesting to think about, but I don't think it's the main point. Right? Say if somebody wants to say, "I believe everything is made up of matter," good for you. Okay, well we can use that word. I believe everything is made up out of mind. Use that word if you want. I believe everything is made up out of cotton candy. Say that, no problem. But the question is, who am I? I'm stuck with myself, and I can run, but I can't hide until I
Okay,
face
that's
myself
good.
and until I humble myself and strive to become what I'm supposed to be.
Those perennial questions, that's why they're called perennial. They never die. So, just some quotes from Christopher Dawson. We can end it here. We actually have to have a part two because there's a lot of topics we kind of had a tangent with the philosophy, but you have to establish yourself in philosophy before you go into religion, of course. So, Christopher Dawson said, as soon as men decide that no, I'm sorry, this is the one I wanted to write. If man limits himself to a satisfied animal existence and asks from life only what such an existence can give, the higher values of life at once disappear. So this is nice. Turning to the animality, we kind of and that's why the perennial questions which you alluded to, they don't even make sense when you start asking them. And I have students that I ask these perennial questions, they look at me like, what? And they don't exist to the person who lives a pure animal existence, which is kind of sad. All right, here's another one, Christopher Dawson. The great fault of modern democracy, a fault that is common to the capitalist and the socialist, is that it accepts economic wealth as the end of society and the standard of personal happiness. So this is in line with materialism, not so much in the philosophical realm, but as a way of life, which is based on the philosophical notion of materialism. All there is to live for this and basically just for the destruction of the individual and the society. And here's another interesting quote. As soon as men decide that all means are permitted to fight an evil, then their good becomes indistinguishable from the evil that they set out to destroy. This is communism. This is materialism. Right? The ends justify the means. That means becomes worse than the very evil that you're trying to get rid of. So this you see this with communism. Um, their so-called good becomes greater evil, and yeah, this is what happens. So when we try to be good apart from God, apart from religion, our goodness becomes the most atrocious evil, right? And God allows this, as which you alluded to also, as a humbling of man, to allow us to be humble, to realize that we need God, to realize that this is necessary. All right, but we definitely have to continue this again. So this is like a to be continued because we're well over an hour, but we will continue this. We'll upload this video and stay tuned for part two of this. All right, Jeremy, thank you for coming on. God bless.